Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Chuck Sameka. I'm a commissioner with the Nevada County Historic Landmarks Commission. We're here today to start an oral history program to try to record lives of information so we don't lose our history. And history is a fluid thing. It encompasses not only Nevada County's history, but history from throughout the world, which all affected us, especially at the time of the gold rush when people from all corners of the earth came to Nevada County. Today, my guest is Torben Eriksen. Torben is an interesting man. He's Danish, and he immigrated to this country several years ago. And so, Torben, I'd like for you to say a little bit about your life, when you were born and where you were born.
I was born in '43 on a farm in Denmark where I grew up and went to school. We went to three or four different schools as we got older and older. And then when I was 17, I was drafted to the military.
You were actually drafted?
Yeah, I was drafted first 16 months and then 2 more years.
So was this the Danish Army or the Danish Air Force?
I was, at that time I had been educated to be a marine radio operator so I could travel. And therefore I went to the Army, to the Signal Corps.
Okay. Well, let's step back a little bit. Because I remember reading through your bio, not your biology, but your bio, that the small Danish farm you were born on itself, the building that you lived in, went back more than 100 years.
Actually went back to the 1700s.
So you lived in a building from the 1700s?
Yeah, and on my mother's side we could trace the family back to the 1600s. But my father was the one who had the farm when I was born. And you might want to talk about what he found.
I do. So there was a lot of rocks in this property, and he would have to disc and farm, and he was pretty familiar with the lie of the land, I assume.
Oh, he sure did. And also, we found a lot of other artifacts in the ground from all the way back to the Stone Age.
To the Stone Age?
Yes, the flint.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what did your dad find that was of national significance?
Well, what really became very much talked about because it was unique was that most probably in around year 950, a Viking chief died, and as a coffin they used the Viking ship. It was not one of the largest ones, but it was still about 60 feet long, and it was hauled a couple of 100 yards away from the fjord and left standing, and then they put big boulders around it, almost like you mark maybe the outline from a lawn to a gravel path or something. So it was marked by boulders. Then it was used as a great timber. The Viking chief was put in there. A lot of horses and dogs were sacrificed, and they also
Horses and dogs were in fact in the ship?
Yeah,
nearby?
No. They considered the ship the long journey that he should take to the next world. So he needed the horses and the dogs. They also put quite a lot of jewelry in there, and some artifacts that were more for everyday use. And then they put planks on top of the Viking ship and put dirt on top of that. And now don't forget there were already rocks lined out along the sides of the Viking ship. And then after so many years, my father, when he plowed, he noticed that he ran into more and more boulders in that area. And as he lined them up, he could see they were lined up in the shape of a ship. So at that time he went to an archaeologist who then did the rest of the excavation. And it became quite sensational because they hadn't really found any Viking ships in Denmark before then. Of course,
that they had found Viking ships in other countries?
In Norway.
I see.
Of course, most of the wood had rotted, but thank God there was the boulders that kind of gave the outline.
I heard that it became a national park of sorts.
Yeah, it did. In Denmark, the law says that nothing found on your ground belongs to you, it belongs to the state. So they claimed the land around it, and they built kind of like a tomb over the Viking ship, and then they did as much preservation of the artifacts that were still left in the Viking ship as they could. The problem was that it had been visited by grave robbers.
Oh,
Yeah, they had stolen most of it, and also the dead Viking chief was not in the ship any longer. He had been taken out. They think it was because as the Danes became Christians 100 or 200 years later, they did not find that they could have that guy there. It was like sacrilegic.
I see.
So,
So it was
yeah.
done a long time ago.
Yeah, it was done a long time ago. But all the jewelry and the horse and dog skeletons and many other things were still left there.
I see. Well, let's change gears just a little bit and go back to when you said you were drafted.
Yeah.
And I believe you said it was the Danish Army.
Yeah, I was drafted to the Danish Army since I was a telegraphist and went into the signal corps. And
What is a telegraphist?
that's a guy who works who worked on freighters, on shipping in general. You could travel worldwide as long as it was only along the coast that you could get. But as a telegraphist was a great job because when you were in port, you were not allowed to use your radio station. So you're off.
So you were doing a non-audio communication?
Yeah, it was never done on shortwave radio. It was done on Morse telegraphy.
Now I understand. Morse code.
Yeah, and we had to keep the owners of the ship informed with how things were going.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, when did you move from that assignment to the Danish Rangers?
That was when I found out that I was being drafted for so many years. I was kind of bored in the military because if there's no war, all soldiers are doing is parading and shining brass and wasting time as far as I was concerned. So there is a very, very unique unit of Danish special forces, only 12 guys that are based in northeast Greenland, and they patrol northeast and north Greenland by dog sleigh. So they can patrol a little bit by boats in the summertime, but most of it takes part in the winter. And then it's pretty involved because you are on patrol for close to half a year without coming back home. And you live out of depots, and you have 12 dogs and a sleigh and a rifle, and you have a partner. And if you meet 5 or 10 other people during those 4 or 5 months, that's pretty much it.
Did you ever have any threats or from wild animals of any kind?
Oh yeah, polar bears.
Polar bears.
I've seen hundreds of them. And we tried very hard not to tangle with them because the outcome was pretty much every time that you had to shoot a polar bear because it was either wanted to kill and eat you or they wanted to kill and eat the dogs. And so if we could, we made big detours so the dogs did not see the polar bears.
Did you patrol alongside, would it be the Inuits or what native people?
No, there weren't any. It's so desolate and it's so cold. We had temperatures down to 60 below in Fahrenheit, and nobody lives there. They cannot live there. They cannot hunt. They cannot fish. Everything is frozen.
I see.
Yeah.
So what was the largest Danish base in Greenland?
The largest Danish base in Greenland was in the West Greenland, a little bit south of the capital, but the largest base in Greenland was an American Air Force base called Thule. At that time it was called Thule. And it was doing a lot of clandestine stuff that didn't really get out.
In the news.
But they were, in the news, but they were sending spy planes over towards the northern parts of Russia at that time, and they were also keeping an eye on what happened north of Greenland, up in the polar basin. There was one remote landing strip for the spy planes in the area we patrolled, but it was only there if their spy planes got in trouble. I don't know if you have heard about the spy plane called U-2,
Sure
the ones
have.
with, one with
U-2.
the long wings, and the other one was the SR-71, and that was the one that was the fastest airplane in the world. And those ones, we saw them fly over. I never saw one on the ground, but I know one landed up there on the emergency landing strip, but I was not around at that time.
Let me ask another question before we leave the Danish Rangers. There were two questions. They were called what, besides Rangers?
The name of the dog star is Sirius. So they found Sirius was a really good name for the patrol. So it was called the Sirius Patrol.
Now I understand.
Yeah.
Now, again, before we leave this discussion, I believe you made a reference at one time that you found a German pilot
Yeah.
in Greenland long after World War II.
Yeah, it was the Germans. No, I'll go further back. United States sent a lot of supplies to Europe during World War II in freighters, and the German submarines tried to sink as many of those ships as they could, so that they wouldn't get the supplies they needed. And in order to know the weather forecast in the North Atlantic, it was very important for the Germans to have meteorological stations along the east coast of Greenland.
Weather stations.
Meteorological stations, yeah.
Yeah.
They would take temperature and different things. Also, especially wind. But if you knew the weather in northeast Greenland, you could pretty much predict how it would be in the North Atlantic some days later. So the Germans sent various groups of scientists and soldiers to East Greenland, and they were hiding out. Some lived in snow caves, and some lived in the mountains, and some lived in ships away from the coast. And the sledge patrol at that time was not created as a serious patrol. It was local hunters and fishermen who reported to the United States that there was a German group of Germans who were doing weather observations in a certain location. And then some of the Danish hunters were enrolled in the American military, and they had wireless radios, so they could call not United States, but they could call American soldiers in Iceland and tell them, okay, here they are, come and bomb them.
Come and bomb them.
Yeah, and some of those hunters and trappers ran into a group of Germans that were hiding in snow caves, and it came to shooting. They actually killed the leader of the German group, and the rest of the Germans contacted Norway, which Germany has occupied.
During World War II.
Yeah. So a plane came and evacuated the Germans, but they left all their stuff there. And it's still there, hand grenades, radios.
I guess the point is you found this man's body
Yes.
years later.
He was shot and he was buried right next to where they were based. And I was with a helicopter when we landed there, and I did not really like to disturb his grave, but the crew on the helicopter removed the rocks, and the German is still lying there. He was in full uniform with sunglasses on and frozen solid, and this was in the late 1960s, so he'd been there since the 1940s.
So I understand.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift gears once again and talk about your experience in another organization, which is NATO.
Yeah, that was kind of a weird thing. I thought after Greenland that I could just travel and use my money, but it turned out that I could not take my own money out of the country. That's the Danish law. except if I worked abroad for 2 years. So I got a job in NATO, and I was the NATO military headquarters in Belgium. And the job was extremely interesting. I have to tell you the classification, because you always hear about top secret. Top secret is not the highest classification. We were classified at cosmic top secret atomal.
Cosmic
Top
secret, what's that last word?
atomal.
Atomic.
Yeah, so we knew where in Europe there were nuclear weapons stashed.
You did.
For the defense. And at that time it was the Iron Curtain. So a lot of information came into the military headquarters from sources in Eastern Europe who did not like the Russians. And we had to read all that stuff. And we had to classify it, whether it was secret, top secret, or whatever. And then we had to, well, there were so many different NATO countries based in the headquarters, so that we had to send the classified information to some of those people, and there were other groups that we were told don't send them anything because NATO didn't trust them.
Not trust
Yeah,
us.
and
Other,
of course
other countries.
France, for instance.
Okay.
And we could not talk about that either.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was there for almost 2 years.
Well, let's move along. And you've led a very interesting life. To me, it's obvious. But I'd like to advance to the point when you left Denmark and Europe and came to South America.
Yeah, that
And
was...
you might have been married by that time, I don't know.
No, not yet. When you decide what to do in life, you have two choices. You can either take a career, and there's nothing wrong with that, or you can decide that you will take any interesting job that comes around, regardless, almost regardless what it is and where it is. So I decided about the interesting jobs, and I got a job for a company that used seaweed to make certain chemicals from it, and they also used citrus peel for the same purpose. And I was based in Mexico. I worked there almost 2 years along the coast of Yucatán, which is what most people pay a fortune for. So I was there diving for seaweed and taking samples of the seaweed. And at that time, my now wife was coming with me. I had met her in Belgium, and she was traveling along with me. And that was good because she was much better at languages than I was.
So she spoke Spanish, and so did you?
In Denmark,
Yeah.
when you go to school in Denmark, it's so different from here because you have all those sports, baseball, basketball, football. We don't have that in Denmark. When we come to 6 or 7 grades, we have at least 2 languages. One of them is always Danish, and then next one is English, and then they add German, and then they add French, and then sometimes they add Spanish also. And that's why we don't have time to all that stuff. I would have loved to do sports.
I see.
Yeah.
You missed
But
out,
anyhow,
you missed out on playing
I spoke
football.
Spanish, but my current wife spoke Spanish much better. But after Mexico, I was sent to various countries, but most of the time Argentina. And in Argentina it was citrus peel that I had to... What I had to do was to observe those plants that shredded, washed and dried citrus peel, so that what they sent to Denmark was not rotten. So that's what I was doing there. And then Paraguay, I was mostly sent there trying to make new contacts for my company for future plants. And then Brazil, I spent quite a long time in Brazil visiting existing plants. They were also doing the peel. And as I said, in Mexico, it was mainly seaweed along the coast of Yucatán.
But you did a lot of diving there.
Yeah, I did a lot of diving. I was a diver while I was in the Navy. But we did not dive very deep because it had to be an area where the local people could dive to the bottom and pick the seaweed. Else there was no point in it. But yeah, we did a lot of diving. We did the whole coast of Yucatán. Every 500 yards we went out and looked for seaweed, and then we took samples and sent the samples back to Denmark. It was very interesting.
Well, let's bring the discussion in another direction. At what point and why did you arrive in Florida?
Oh yeah, that was a bit later because now I was also sent to the Far East, to Indonesia, which is a beautiful, very, very interesting country. And should you ever learn a language, learn to speak Indonesian, because it's so simple. The grammar has no exceptions, and if you can remember the vocabulary, then you are doing fine. You make future tense by saying tomorrow. You don't change the sentence, but you just put tomorrow in it. And past tense you say yesterday. And plural you say the word twice. I find that pretty simple.
Well, let's get you in towards the United States where we are today. So you were in Florida for a while.
Yeah, Denmark is a very nice and well-organized country, but pretty boring, because everything is done, everything is set. And so I took a 2-year language course in Copenhagen, Spanish, English, French. And then my wife and I left, so hopefully get into United States.
As an immigrant.
As an immigrant, but just be aware, for a person from Western Europe, it's extremely difficult. It is very, very hard. Because at that time they had all the refugees from Eastern Europe, and they got in first.
I see.
So one of the few options we had was to get an American company to sponsor us as employees that they really needed. So we located a company in Key West, Florida, that did treasure hunting. They were diving for gold, and I convinced them that they needed me because I spoke Spanish, which they spoke some places in the Caribbean, and because I was a diver from the Danish Navy, and because I was a radio operator. So I signed on with them for about 1.5 years, and we spent about a year in the Caribbean. We went to quite a lot of islands in the Caribbean and looked for gold, and we also went to the northern part of South America to look for gold again. We didn't find any gold, and I didn't really care because I was not interested in the gold. I was interested in getting sponsored. The reason I was almost hoping we wouldn't find any gold was because the people who ran that company were like pirates. They would have stolen everything.
Well, gold and pirates and ships.
We would never have seen a piece of that gold. But we had a good time. At a certain period, there were about 30 young guys on board, all divers, plus the crew that sailed the ship. So we had a lot of fun.
Well, take us to the point when you did get, I guess you first were with a green card in the United States.
Yeah, well, it was...
And then when you settled down.
Yeah, it was kind of odd because the green card was I wanted to get. And at that time, Reagan was the president, and he gave amnesty to everybody.
Oh, really?
Including me.
Oh, is that right?
But I'm not quite sure where my amnesty was, because Reagan had done it, or it's because I had spent my time with that company. But anyhow, we got the green card, my wife and I, and I bought a truck in Florida, and we drove very, very slowly across America, zigzagging up and down and around. And the further west we got, the better we liked it. In fact, it was strange in some of the southern states. I had shorts on and people made catcalls and kind of, it's like, oh, come on, give me a break. So when we got out around Arizona, California, Nevada, we noticed that almost whatever we did, even if it was really, really crazy, they would say, oh, that is really neat.
different culture, huh?
They were willing to accept anything.
Hell yeah.
So my wife and I bought a piece of property here south of Grass Valley and started building a house in 81. And we had hardly any money left at that time because I had spent most of it bumming around. So we started building, and I think we had $600. That's true. But strangely enough, we got jobs right away, good jobs. I worked for your college, I worked for the hospital. My wife worked for the hospital, and she worked for the county. So I have no complaints. We did fine.
And you settled down and you had children here?
Yeah, we had 2 daughters. One is now living in New York. The other one just took a PhD. She lives in Denmark. And we'll see where they end up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when my wife knows where they will end up, we'll most probably move. She misses them.
Everybody wants to be near the kids, right?
Yeah, she misses them.
Yeah. Well, you know, in a nutshell, that's a very fine story, and I wish we had a little more time. Hopefully sometime you might come back again and we can talk more.
You'll see how it goes with this one.
Okay, well, I think it's going to go just fine. I want to thank you again, Torben.
Yeah, okay, sure. You're welcome.
I appreciate you talking to us
And I hope
today.
I didn't use any really weird foreign words or speak too fast.
No, I think you did just fine. Thank you.
All right.